Welcome to another edition of Marvel Draw. I am your host, Brian Crosby from Marvel, and today we're going to be drawing Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, in her battle helmet. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be using a blue colored pencil, and really that's just for the underdrawing that I'm going to be doing. Nothing special about it, any colored pencil will do. And then I'm going to be using an HB or a B pencil and a 6B, which I'll be doing the outlines with. And you can use really anything that you have. You can use markers, you can use pencils, crayons, whatever you have around the house will be fine. When I do a humanoid character, I always start with a circle. And you see I'm using that blue colored pencil, really so I don't have to erase or anything. It's kind of loose and sketchy. Once I really want to commit to the lines I'm going to be doing, then I'll use the darker pencil. So after I've done my circle, you see it's not exactly perfect, it's real loose. I'm going to do a center line right down the middle. It helps me divide the face up. Okay. Now I'm going to do her chin. So much like, kind of like if you've ever seen me draw Spider-Man, I'll draw her chin a little bit thinner than I would say like a Hulk or a Captain America that has a big broad chin. All right, now I'm gonna take that center line, I'm gonna go all the way down to the base of her chin. That helps me divide the face in half. So that what I'm doing on the left is the same as what I'm doing on the right, okay? You see she's got that cool mohawk, so we're gonna be drawing that too. So this should be a fun one. Okay, next thing I'm gonna do is the eye line. Now the eye line is typically about halfway in between from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin. You don't wanna do it too high or too low, unless you're doing, alien characters or things like that where you're really changing things up. But for a normal human character, your eyes are about in the center of your head, okay? Then in between that point and the bottom of the chin, about not quite halfway, I'm just gonna do a notch, and that's gonna mark where her mouth is going to live, right there. And then just above that, about halfway between, another notch, and that's gonna be the bottom of her nose. So that's kind of how I break up the face. All right, now along that eye line, just on the other side will be her ears. Now her ears are gonna be largely covered in this helmet, but I wanna know where they're at so I can draw over them. So they're gonna be about there. The next thing I'm gonna do is on one side of the head, I'm gonna do the other thing, I'm gonna do this on the other side as well. But basically I'm gonna go from about halfway in between that top point and the eye line. I'm gonna come down and create a little ridge and then go all the way down in between the chin and the end of the jaw. And that's gonna be helpful for a couple of reasons. A, it's gonna help me define where her eye is gonna go, but also helps me with her helmet, some of the details we're gonna be putting in later. And I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. So her head starts to kind of look like a little bit of a basketball right now. Cool. Now the next thing I'm gonna draw are her eyes. Now her eyes, when she's in her helmet, are kind of a solid white. I'm gonna use that eye line. I like to make my eyes maybe a little bit bigger. They're not quite rectangles. They have kind of an oval shape to them, something like that. Maybe a little bit angular. She's Captain Marvel. She's strong, she's tough, and we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. All right, so there's her eyes. Now for her nose, I like to just draw just a little circle, like kind of a little squashed oval right there where the nose would be. I know it looks kind of strange right now, but that's how I like to do it, just to kind of start it off. And then for the mouth, so that notch I made is really the crease where her lips meet. So lips, there's a trick to lips. So I make a small oval at the bottom, just like that. And then at the top, I make 2 circles. Okay, so kind of like that. And then I'm gonna trace around those shapes and come out to the edge of where my middle line is. So just go around those circles and then down to the edge of the mouth. And then same thing here on the bottom. Just like that. okay? So she has, there's that crease in the middle, goes around and connects to the other side. Now for that mohawk, now I'm just gonna, again, I'm just doing rough shapes right now. It's gonna come back down to about right there. That's about halfway in between the top of the head and the center point. And here I'm gonna make this wedge shape. Now ultimately this is gonna be hair. It's gonna be kind of flopped over, but I like to know about where it's gonna live. And then it's gonna come down the back of her head over here. Again, if I'm going too fast, it's okay. I'm going a little fast because there's a lot to get done with Carol Danvers here. But if I'm going too fast for you, that's okay. Just you can stop the video and get caught up. Okay? Now that bottom of her nose is kind of like that. It's really like a, how do I describe it? Kind of like a bracket underneath. You want to draw the full nose. You know, I like to keep, when I'm drawing female characters, I like to keep the features a little bit softer. And you can do a little, you know, maybe a little definition in her nose if you want. But for the most part, that's about it. That's all I like to do. Now we're going to draw her mask. So her mask comes about halfway up the bridge of her nose and then down like that. And then it comes all the way across from the underneath the eye over about half the ear. Just like that. And then we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. So we're gonna come down and then go about halfway up the ear and create that ridge. Great, so now we're gonna do the bottom half of her mask. So the ear it's really an ear covering, and it's very angular. Almost like Iron Man a little bit. Kind of like that. And you see I'm going a little bit darker now with my blue pencil, so I'm committing a little bit more to those lines. And then it covers up part of her jawline. So that basketball line that we used before, that's really helping us now. So now I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. So angular shape, and then I'm gonna come down, cover up, follow that, use that basketball line as a guideline, and then down and over, okay? You can darken that in, her jawline a little bit if you want to commit to that line. Now she's got kind of a chin strap thing going on, so it's gonna come up. It's almost kind of like Captain America, but it's a bit more angular and not quite as militaristic. All right, now at the top, I'm gonna do her brow line. So she's gonna have a bit more aggression, not angry, but a bit more aggression with the eyebrows. She doesn't really have eyebrows here because it's covered in the helmet, but we're gonna suggest them with that. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're going to do kind of the rest of the helmet over here. Okay, so we're gonna use that basketball line. Remember, I told you that was gonna come in handy. We're just gonna follow it, and then we're gonna go around the brow line and connect back with the top of the ear. And then we're gonna finish off that ear cap, just like that. And then you can darken in that line. Okay? And then she's got, do some ridges here on the side of her helmet. They're almost like little lightning bolts, if you will. Okay, now we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now we gotta do the hair, of course. That's one of the fun parts. Okay, so we're gonna be real loose with it. So I'm using that wedge shape that I did before as a guideline to create some of these really cool wavy lines. And you can make this however you want it to look. And then it'll come all the way down on the back, kind of like that. Then maybe have one that's just kind of flopped over in the front. It's always kind of cool. Okay. Okay, so I'm feeling pretty good about my underdrawing here. So I'm gonna put my blue colored pencil aside, and I'm gonna go over to my B pencil, all right? And I'm gonna commit to these lines a little bit more. So you see how I did that nose there? So I'm not overdoing it. I'm really just doing the bottom part of that nose, and there's a little bit of a shadow underneath. So here's those lips now, so you can see them a little bit better. I try not to do those too dark. Like when I'm drawing a male character, a lot of times I won't even draw the actual lips. I'll just do a line and suggest it. But when I'm doing a female character, I make them a little bit more defined. Again, this is just how I do it. You can find your own method that works best for you. Okay? All right, so now we get to the hair at last. So I'm gonna follow that same line work that I made with my blue colored pencil, but I'm gonna put in a little bit more detail in the hair. So you see I'm still following the same shape language, but I'm adding a few more lines to suggest that there's more hair there. This is such a cool design for this character. There you go, kind of like that. It's almost kind of fiery. Okay, so now I'm gonna set aside my B pencil. I'm gonna take out my 6B, and this is what I use for the heavy lines or the shadows, things like that. And I'm gonna do a nice outline on Carol here so that it really pops for you guys. And I'm gonna add some shading to her. So I like to do a little bit of shading underneath that brow line and then along the front of her mask. So the light source would be coming from up above in this case. And then maybe comes back. It's it's a very reflective surface, her helmet here. So I would illustrate this in a very similar way to how I would do Iron Man. Kind of like that. And then I like to do, the brow would be receiving light. So I'm gonna do the top of her head, just kind of like this. But let the light hit her brow line right there. Okay, so that's basically the shading on one side of her helmet. I'm gonna do the same thing now on the other side. Gonna kind of echo what I did on my right, her left, over here. Do a little bit of shading on that chin strap so it's clear that it's not flesh. And I'm just trying to think when I do this is where would the light be hitting if it were coming down on her face. Now a colorist will really be able to make this pop. Again, I'm gonna let her brow line be open. Okay, now as promised, I'm gonna do that full outline of her head. I'm gonna outline, because her hair is popping off, I'm going to outline that as well. There you go. And there you have it. We have Captain Marvel. So hope you guys had fun drawing along with me. And as always, before you walk away from your drawing, you got to sign it. That's what makes it yours. So I'm going to put my name right down here at the bottom, Brian Crosby. So again, hope you guys had fun drawing Captain Marvel, and make sure you join us next time for another Marvel draw. And remember, this is Marvel, your universe.